Today's conversation is going to move you in ways you may not expect. My guest, Carly Ottaway, is the founder of Web of Words and the author of Coming Home, as well as the visionary behind the Mirror Effect. Carly doesn't just talk about reinvention, she has lived it, walking through fire, both literally and figuratively, and choosing to rebuild her life and business on her own terms. Her work is about truth telling, identity, and what it means to meet your favorite self, the version of you that feels most alive now. Carly has built an award winning agency, raised a family, and written a book that is part memoir, part permission slip, and part mirror. Today, we're going to explore what it means to turn breakdowns into becoming, how storytelling heals, and how authenticity creates ripple effects far beyond ourselves. This is more than an entrepreneurial story. It's a journey home to who you've always been. Welcome, Carly, to Ambitious, Awakened, and Aligned. So
Thank you.
thrilled to have you here.
I am so happy to be here. Thank you so, so much. As a listener, now getting to be a guest, it's so fun.
I remember the first time I met you, and you just had this light that I've come to recognize, when you find your people. And it's like this familiarity, which is so interesting because we're going to get into the title of your book, Coming Home, all the things. And I felt that familiarity with you from the moment I met you. So I'm thrilled to have you here and just to share your voice with our audience here today. So
Mm.
let's jump right into this exciting chapter in your life, which is coming home. And you have just launched a book. It's launching this week. And Coming Home is the title of the book. And it opens with this sort of unimaginable, it caught me in my tracks because I knew you and I didn't know the story, which is so true of many people we meet. But you lost your house to a fire. And I'm really curious, what did that moment teach you about identity, resilience, and this idea of home beyond four walls?
Oh my goodness. We're getting right into it
We're
off the bat. I
getting
love
right
I
into
love
it.
it. Yeah, so many of those lessons took weeks, months, even years in the
Mhm.
making, right? But I also in that moment, I remember like that first week after losing our house in the fire, kind of feeling like there's no resource, I've never experienced this. We had like let alone the insurance battle that we had ahead. And I just kind of remember thinking in my head, I wish that there was a book that you could read to help you, like many times in life when we think that in early motherhood or in entrepreneurship, I wish there was a book that covered this. And that really inspired a lot of the themes that I write about. But I just felt so lost and not knowing what the path was going to be. There was so much uncertainty. And it was a huge lesson in surrender. So at that point, I feel like I had learned a lot about surrendering first through entrepreneurship, then through early motherhood. I was still fairly early postpartum. We're really clawing our our way out of the pandemic when the fire happened. I had a 9-month old and a 2-year old, and yeah, I had to surrender in a way that I had never experienced before.
Mhm.
And I think there was just so much trusting, and it taught me so much about myself. Anytime you hit that rock bottom moment or go through a loss of that kind, now looking back, I see how much it was such a shedding of old identities and truly a spiritual experience in terms of like burning down the old so that I could step into the new. And like there's so many metaphors there and rising from the ashes. I'm always careful with the cliches, but I felt that. I felt like I had to just rebuild from the ground up. But I think it's also a powerful reminder that like it's not completely starting over. You're building up from the foundation that you've spent your life building to that point.
Mhm.
So I had to lean so hard on so many of my tools and practices to help me through that.
Mhm. You know, what struck me when I first read the story, and I wanted to jump into it quickly because you jump into it so quickly in the book, and I think it's a profound beginning because so many times in life, we're on this path that feels so aligned and luscious and for us, and we're following it, and everything is just it's this beautiful resonance of what's happening. And then something unexpected happens because that's life. And so to help take us there immediately, and I think too it's easy to look from the outside. This is what struck me when I read it too, and look at I hear this often. I look at Carly and I think, "Oh, she's got it all together." She wouldn't know. She wouldn't know what suffering and surrender looks like. She wouldn't understand what I'm going through, and so I love that we can come to these moments of seeing someone who has a beautiful business and family and success, the way we define that from the outside, and yet has really found a way to not be stuck in those stories and to instead create that from it. So share with us a little bit about, what that taught you even about that journey in
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah, first, I think it's such a powerful reminder that, especially in the online space, we see such a small snippet. Even when we are very intentional about trying to show up authentically and show more of the full picture, it's so hard to do that. And so there's nothing like writing a book to really let you dive into those parts of yourself. And just it was such a massive identity shift for me. And I think the biggest thing that I held on to at that time was because I had these 2 young kids that, I don't want this to be a traumatic experience for them, and I feel like I have their childhood in my hands. I also just didn't want to let myself go on autopilot and, get lost in that experience. Knew that I had the responsibility that I had their childhood in my hands, and I didn't want to pause our life. We were in such a precious season. I mean, all seasons are precious in their own way, but that was very apparent to me that I wouldn't let this consume me to the point that I would miss out on what's right in front of me.
So
So I
beautiful,
think
Carly.
the presence the lessons through the presence, which forced me also to be in it and feel it. And there were moments when I said to my husband, "Okay, please can you handle, like, the insurance side of things? I'll focus on this." We had to divide and conquer. But it sent me on this healing journey that I then awakened where I needed to heal in my motherhood journey, in mothering myself, reparenting myself.
Mhm.
It just really pushed me down that path, and, you know, there's the analogy around how the universe will do that when you're really needing the lesson, and sometimes it comes in a much more forceful way than you want to receive it,
Mhm.
but I really do feel like I needed that, and I think we downplay those moments too, right? Because we kind of are like, it was easy for me to be a lot of people around would be like, "Oh, now you get to build your dream home," and,
Right.
I'm all for seeing the silver linings. That's kind of just my innate part of me. I feel like I've always been that way, but what we didn't know at the time was we had a big issue with insurance because our contractors at the time, their insurance uh, had expired without them letting us know. There was an issue with our own insurance with the communication around us not living on the premises, and we were actually given the wrong insurance. So there was a good stretch of time, like, I'm talking weeks into months, that we didn't know if we were covered, and we seriously had to had to kind of face that worst case scenario of what if we
Mhm.
just lost everything that we just poured our entire life savings into. So that was the ultimate test for me,
Does
and
that
really
moment
realizing
Yeah, what does that moment bring you to?
I think for me, it really made me realize that home is so much more than the physical space.
Mhm.
Abundance is so much more than a monetary number. It really is in the presence. And I was in this stage of life where that I had dreamt about having these young kids and having this business that I loved, working with my husband. There were so many beautiful things, and I just had to really focus on that. And I also had this deep trust that I just knew we would figure it out and that we would be okay.
Mhm. That's profound. I'm curious, having your children go through that moment and being authentic and also holding the safety for them. Has anything come back yet of their experience? Have they shared? Have they been able to express what that time was like for them? Or were they just too
Mm.
little to even know, and you protected it so much that they just
Yeah.
saw joy?
Well, it was interesting because when the fire happened, we were renovating, right? And we would go on visits with my daughter, and she would be so freaked out by like a hole in the floor where the vent was supposed to be that she wouldn't want to walk into the room because there was a hole in the floor. So she was already kind of so I was like, She cannot see this house in this state. I just didn't, we didn't want to expose them to that." And I also know that they hear conversations and they absorb so much more than we even realize. So we had to be very intentional the way we were talking about things, and we just kind of had presented it as, we're starting fresh, we're starting over. And then as she got a little bit older, we were able to share a little bit more, and just kind of gradually started painting the picture a little bit more for her. And not too long ago, there was another fire, unfortunately, a house fire in our neighborhood. And my daughter was at school at the time, and so was my son was in daycare. But for Luke and I, we could see the smoke from our kitchen window, and immediately our, hearts drop knowing what that experience brings. But we did take our kids by the construction later, the destruction, and helped and just use that to kind of explain a little bit about going through that. And now look what we've built from that. And so it was easier to explain that once we were on the other side, for sure,
Mhm.
as it often is.
Absolutely, and once they get older and you can, use it as an example of some things that they'll go through that might not be exactly the same, but you'll be able to really, like, hold space for them in that. So you've said the book wasn't really a polished plan, that it was more something that really pulled you, and I feel like everyone has a story inside them and they don't follow that nudge as much. I love that you followed your nudge, so tell us how this was pulled and how you were guided to this.
I'm also just so grateful that I followed the nudge. And this has been like a dream on my heart as long as I can remember. I always loved words and writing. Like since I was a little girl, that really was my dream job. And then it led me to copywriting and marketing. But this was really a return to my roots of like writing my own story. And in the writing process, I had to write it for myself first. I think that's so important when it comes to creating something that feels like this piece of art that you're creating it from a place of this is what I need or needed, and I'm writing it for myself first. And then in the editing process, you can, then really get clear on your audience. And it's such a flip from the marketing space where everything's so fast, and we're like getting an idea and putting it out into the world, and there isn't as much of that whole process involved behind the scenes. So I felt so lit up and aligned in the writing, actually in the editing too. I loved those processes. It was so creative for me. I it just like awakened this part of me. And then I was able to show up, as my favorite self that we can talk about. I use that term in the book in so many other areas of my life too, because I felt this like whole new excitement again. But I think it's so important to listen, slow down enough that you are listening to those nudges. And if you have that dream on your heart, let it flow the way that it needs to flow, and stop thinking about the how. And I think it's important to have a bit of a vision of the kind of full circle moment where you can let yourself imagine what it's going to feel like to say I did that. That I held that through the process a lot too. But just take it literally one paragraph, one page at a time. And the rough draft is meant to be rough. It is meant to be rough. And the rough draft alone, if I stopped there, which I'm so glad I didn't, but if I stopped there, it already still would have been so rewarding. It was so therapeutic to write in this way, to write my story in this way. It opened up, a whole new world of healing for me. So I think just trust that it's going to lead you on the path and that the story that's meant to be told will be told if you're willing to follow and let it come out, let it flow.
Mhm. It's so true. So what did you learn about yourself in the process that surprised you, that you weren't expecting to
Ooh.
have meet you in that process?
It's so interesting, having I've been in business 10 years now running a marketing agency, and it was just another experience of where I was able to sit in the client's chair again in a new way, which I think is so important, in our work to put ourselves in those experiences,
Hold those mirrors
especially.
up, which is part of what you talk about, yes?
Yes. So I had to go through, I talk a lot about a core wound around not enoughness in the book, or I write about it, and just kind of my experience working through that and showing up. And for a long time, I was the one hiding behind the keyboard. And then I was sharing other people's stories, which I love that work and being a mirror for them and helping them see their full potential and their powerful selves. But I didn't realize how much I was playing small in the process.
Mhm.
And so I think in the early stages, like, or even more so kind of when I had finished the book and started finally like reading it over and editing and refining, I had that moment of being like, okay, yeah, my story is pretty fucking powerful. And that was just everything to
Mhm.
me to again, it wasn't an external, I wasn't needing to hear that from someone else. It was me believing in that for myself.
Wow. This is what I think the power of going through writing your story, as you said, even if the rough draft was all that ever happened, and this is meant to be out in the world, and so it is. Um, but that healing process, the way you describe it in itself, what have you noticed then of how that shows up in other places now?
Ooh. Well, I interestingly, like, the process to publishing once the book was done, I feel like has taken me on this journey of the lessons I share in the book in a whole other way, which kind of just reminds you of the next quantum leap is not that it can kind of be the
Mhm,
same struggles, the same but it's stretching you in a different way. It's stretching you in that next capacity
mhm,
and so I remember kind of realizing too that I was going from like I kind of gotten through the not enoughness and really believing in like, no, I am enough. My story is powerful enough. I'm worthy of this. But then the visibility wound started coming up as I got closer to publishing, and the fear was around being misunderstood. I even like I meditate a lot, and I did a lot of worst case scenario meditations, letting myself feel that and how I would handle that if it were to happen. And, I was like in like thinking of cancel culture and just like the worst things that could happen. And I think as women too, we tend to feel those wounds on a whole deeper level. It was like that whole visibility wound because I knew I was putting myself out there in a way I never have before.
mhm,
And it's so vulnerable to do that. This is a vulnerable story that I'm sharing.
mhm.
So I think I'm still working through that. I think I think I'm getting a lot closer and stronger and building more resilience there. But I think that's kind of this next level that I think it's so important to put ourselves out there and I hope by me doing this that it encourages other women to go for it too and to know that they can push through that fear. They can get to the other side. We can be in here supporting each other and they're going to build the resilience to handle whatever surprises come their way along the way.
And that's the beautiful thing about women using their voices. It is the ripple effect of one person reading it and coming into their enoughness, and then one person, and that it just ripples out when you have the courage to do that, and so congratulations because that's not It's not easy. It's a choice. We have this choice every moment to say, "Am I gonna step into my calling and allow your power to be released?" So this is I'm so excited to be like a part of this journey with you. In the book, you introduce this concept of favorite self. How is the concept of favorite self different from highest self, which we use a lot now, it's everywhere, and we kinda chase that. How do we know the difference? Walk us through this. I think it's so powerful when you read it in the book as well, but share your version of this with us.
I think you named it right there when you said the chasing, like and that's how I felt when the highest self, the best self, the future self always felt like it came with pressure and it came with performance,
Mhm.
honestly. And
Or
I
real
think,
self. I hear that said a lot too. Your
yes, authentic
truest,
self,
authentic self. Yes.
which does
Keep going.
resonate more with me, but I also feel like it feels a bit of like a buzzword of like, okay,
Yeah.
what does being authentic really mean? And for me, favorite self is really rooted in presence, and that's what I was talking about, the learning that through, through the fire and everything of, like, actually being present with myself. I remember that year I had chosen presence as my word of the year,
Wow.
and the reason I chose it was because I wanted to be present with my kids and present in my business, with my team, with my clients, but I had no idea what it would teach me about being present with myself.
Mm.
And I think that's where a favorite self stems from it. And it really ultimately is that self that makes you feel most alive, most lit up and inspired and aligned.
Mm.
And, when you are in a bit of a season of survival, like for me, kind of, thick and postpartum, coming out of the pandemic, rebuilding everything that we had lost while still leading a business, it's easy to get to turn on that autopilot, like I said, it forced me to sit in it and learn to love and heal parts of myself that I had never I had never truly embraced before.
Mm. That's powerful. I was thinking as you were saying that as well, and we're gonna get to a little bit about your business, but it's important at this point, you had a team to look after too. And, many people listening might be entrepreneurs or solopreneurs. It's a whole other level when you have a team and you're leading a team and leading a company that has that as a
Yes.
responsibility as well. So, that just kind of amplifies it. I really love this perspective of favorite self. So thank you for just the spin on it that makes it feel like it's something we can resonate with and something that we can live and not again do this whole "I'm not enoughness" wound, so it helps clear that. So I loved that, it was so juicy. Okay, the mirror effect also is a framework that you introduce in the book. So can you share how you first discovered it and how it's shown up? We kinda talked about it a little bit, with writing the book, but how's it shown up both personally and in leading web of
Yeah.
the
Oh,
business?
yes. Yes, so it was really inspired from my work in marketing and, how we use an approach that's called mirroring, and it's in terms of mirroring what our audience the language our audience uses, the emotions that they're feeling to really resonate with them, which is so important in marketing because especially when there's a bit of a gap, when you've been doing what you do for a long time, you're the expert in your space, sometimes you forget. That's why I said, like, putting yourself in the client seat, right? And sometimes you actually have to force yourself into that position to remember what it feels like. So, there's that side of things, but I really especially in motherhood, I started to realize how much my kids were a mirror of my own energy. And so what I the concept with the mirror effect is that, you attract what you project. So, with my kids, I was realizing so much that, like, when I was showing up dysregulated and, if I had a stressful day, then I'd see it in their energy, or actually, usually what would happen is they'd be off, they'd be acting a certain way, and I'm like, "What's going on? Something's just, like, not right," and then I'd have to really check in with myself and be like, "Okay, actually, that's coming from me."
Mhm.
And then the opposite, when I am feeling like I am showing up in full presence in my favorite self, I see that reflected back at them. So the greatest teachers and healers in all the ways. But I started then realizing like how much everything is a mirror around us, in terms of the people that you're surrounding yourself with, and in your leadership, I think is a huge one. It's so important as a leader that you're the vision holder, you're the energy holder, and the way that you're showing up, your team is reflecting that back at you. Your clients are feeling that and reflecting that back. And again, in a different way in your marketing, not just what you say, but the way you say it, the way that you show up. And that's why I always say in social media that the energy that you show up with is actually way more important than what you're saying. And yeah, it's just shown up for me in so many, and in my own manifestation journey, the universe is a mirror reflecting back. Um, it's been a powerful tool that I really leaned on. So I'm so excited to be able to share it this way.
Our listeners are, for the most part, leaders, ambitious women like you and I in leadership roles. And something that we don't talk enough about that I love you're putting a spotlight on is how your energy goes, is how the organization flows. In fact, I've started speaking out about I think a business is a nervous system in alignment with how the leader's nervous system is functioning. And so if
Yes.
we actually start to look at the biology of that, the energy is functioning right from the leadership. And I've had a beautiful opportunity to work directly with your team, and they absolutely resonate at the vibration of you. And I've had that experience. I remember thinking when we first started working together, "Oh, I'm sad I won't work directly with Carly."
Mm.
And then the second I met the first person I got to work with, Sharon and then Maria, as soon as I started meeting your team, it's like I am working with Carly, and I felt it immediately. And so, is this something that you are really intentional about? Like, I'm wondering a practical way for our leaders listening of how to if they're not they may get it, but they're not sure how to practically apply it. Is there an insight there that you might be able to share?
Yeah, I love this question. And that's the ultimate compliment to me too, because I had to go through a whole identity shift because I started my business being the social media manager, being the copywriter. It was just me at the beginning. And then my husband joined me and we got to partner in this together. And then we got to build the team. And we're so intentional in the hiring process, in the training process. It was so much more about cultural fit for us. At least we learned that, after maybe a couple of wrong
We
hires.
always have to learn that.
Exactly. Learn the lessons the hard way.
Yes.
And then when it clicks, it's just like, "Oh, yeah, that's the sweet spot. That's where the magic is." And so I think it's like setting that intention and it starts just right off within the hiring process. And then from there, it's really I believe that our team plays such an important role in the growth and the direction of the business. First of all, I believe the whole thing about you build the team and the team builds the business and pouring so much into that. But I also think of them as like they're manifesting dream clients right along with me. I want the clients that they're working very closely with to feel so aligned with them. That's so important. So I think that alignment, and that's why, I know when I'm pairing up like a team member with a client that it is going to be that great fit so that you get that feeling. And that's a big part of the process too. And that's about knowing my team, knowing their human design, knowing their astrology. I love nerding out on that stuff. I think it's so important for my own self-awareness and my leadership, but then also for my team. So I know the way that I make decisions may not be the way that my team makes decisions or my husband makes decisions. And I'm sacral authority in human design. So I lead with my gut. I'm quick. I'm a heck yes or a no. Whereas I know there's other team members that are emotional authority. And so I tell them, I'm like, take the night, sleep on it, and then let's have a conversation tomorrow. So I think just being able to empower them in that way and know what's most in alignment for them
Mhm.
and for your clients in the same capacity, that's where the magic happens.
And what's coming up for me as you say all of that is everything is energy. And recognizing that and using the tools that support the awareness in that amplify your leadership, your business, your connection, your joy, all of it, your fulfillment, everything. So thank you for that. It's amazing. The story is such of weaving of motherhood and entrepreneurship and um, really becoming identity evolution, let's call it. And so, our children are such a deep mirror for that. And you talked a little bit about it, but what are maybe one or two things that the mirror of your children have actually really taught you?
Ugh. Well, on this journey alone, there's been different ways, just talking about like if there is a dream on your heart to put a book into the world. What you just explained is a pure example of how it wasn't polished. I had all these things that I wanted to write about and include that were big parts of me that were so important that I was able to share, and that's why it was hard to make sense as a Manny Gen. In human design, I like to have my hand in many different things. I have many different passions. So it didn't make sense. I was like, how is this all going to work together? That was in the editing. That's in the magic of the editing process. Let the rough draft be rough. I'll say that, over and over again. But with my kids, they were my North Star in this whole process. So when I had those moments, like I said, I was first writing the book for myself. And part of that was like thinking of my younger self and, many different seasons of life. My younger self, like I said, that in the fire that needed a resource to help guide her through that uncertainty. The one in early postpartum that was leading a business and had babies and was like, how will I possibly do both? Is motherhood even an option for me if I'm so ambitious in my career? And also just my younger self that played Harriet the Spy, writing in her journal and dreamt of writing a book one day. And so my daughter especially was such a mirror that when I found myself losing sight of my why, I could literally look her in the eye and to see a reflection of my 6-year-old self and be like, that is more than enough reason for me to follow through with this. And now there were moments in this journey that actually took me away from being present with my kids. I think that's the juggle. There's no perfect balance. It's a dance. There were definitely nights I had that conversation with my husband, who's my business partner early on in this year, where I was like, this is the year. I'm going for it. This is gonna be a full family affair because I knew that it would take me away from other things for me to really focus and make this happen, and there would be sacrifices. But now, I mean, now that this is coming out into the world, and I'm getting ready to host my book launch party, and my kids get to come, and they get a backstage pass to the whole experience. They've been part of this, they've held the book in their hands, and I've really been intentional about bringing them along on that journey. I think I've always been aware that bring your kids to work day for me literally looks at me sitting at a desk at a computer. It's not that exciting in my home office, with the feet all the time.
Yeah.
So this was kind of an experience and like I finally have something tangible that I can hold when I work online and everything's so digital. So it just brings it full circle and then getting to share that with them and knowing like getting to explain to them how much of a dream this is and show them what it takes to make it happen and how magical it is when it does.
Yeah, and for them to sit in that room and celebrate and have it mirrored back to them, this beautiful soul that you are, that they get to experience, but now they get to experience it through the eyes of the people that you've had such an impact on. I think that's so magical, and I shed some tears there. A lot of what you said just, like, hit the heartstring, because 'cause I've always said to my daughter, who's now 28, that her looking in her eyes was always the moments that healed me the most and made me dig into my soul of who I wanted to be for her until I learned it was for me as well. And so I think that that's something we experience as moms. And my journey from corporate leadership into entrepreneurship, I got to take the kids when they were littles into the corner. I had the corner office and the big high tower, and I had this like the little Fisher people toys that if the kids ever came in for whatever reason, my executive assistant would like play the
I
little
love that.
animals with them. And the kids remember that, and they're like, "And Faye would always have chocolate for us." And then when I got into entrepreneurship, it was interesting because to your point, It's like, what do they see now? Because it's not like that, and yet I can say, because I've sat in both places, they get to see you evolve and expand and show them what is possible in a way, building your own business in a way they could never, ever have that experience without us having the courage to be entrepreneurs.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Oh my
it's
goodness.
it's so
I love.
beautiful.
Thank you for mirroring that back, first of all. That's also like me getting to see your experience now in motherhood with adult children, and what they've experienced getting to where they are now is it just goes to show the power of the proof of possibility. And so getting to be the proof of possibility for my kids and also getting to give them this gift of this book that I was able to write in this season of our life that they'll always have. They were the first ones that got the first copies of the book. It's dedicated to them, and my daughter immediately put it on her bookshelf, and she, wanted to know exactly how many pages it was because the volume was impressive for her.
That's amazing.
Is what mattered. Um, but yeah, and I feel like it's just the beginning of that, and now getting to hopefully take them. I'm like, I'm manifesting. Let's go Europe book tour. Let's dream big, and I get to take them with me. And who knows what this is going to lead to, So yeah, it took me away in some little moments. Maybe I missed some pickups that I love to be there for, or maybe I was in a bit of a not so present at bedtime when I'm getting all these ideas that I wanna write about and racing back to my computer as soon as they're asleep, but now look what gets to come from that.
Exactly. It's a rebirth in a different way. It's birthing something in a different way, and they get to be a part of it, which is so beautiful. So let's go to Web of Words so that we can talk about your business. You built Web of Words from a $300 retainer into this thriving agency. So, like, what did it take internally to expand beyond that maybe freelancer, solopreneur type of a vibe into a CEO and a leader, because this is something I'm so passionate about. Every entrepreneur listening, you are a leader. So help us with how you navigated into that.
Yeah. I'm I'm so grateful for what I didn't know at that time, the innocence of when I first started the business, because I had that was brave enough to take that risk, and I mean, I was in my late 20s, so I didn't have nearly as many responsibilities as now. I was just willing to go for it, and I think it was very much a following my intuition without realizing that at the time, just taking a leap without having much of a safety net there, and believing that it could turn into something. But I still think I was dreaming small, and I think it's I was born in a small town. I went away for school in Toronto, so that was like a huge culture shock for me. But I still had a hard time dreaming big, and I didn't have a ton of expanders and expansion to look to until I got into entrepreneurship, and then it got me in these s- surrounded by these people, these especially women who were doing such impactful, amazing things, and that's when I saw what was possible and really just continued to learn a lot of lessons the hard way, put myself in uncomfortable positions and put myself out there, but ultimately also stay true to myself and what felt good, and there were many detours along the way, but always coming back to myself.
Mhm.
And I think there were many times when I had to lean on the belief of others. I write about that in the book, how much my husband was a believer for me. I'm so grateful that he saw something in me and believed in me from the early stages. And I was able to, he was a mirror to me, and I was able to lean on that belief in the times when I was struggling to find it myself. And I think that's partnership. That constant balance. And now for us being partners in life and parenthood and business, when one of us is down, the other one's able to pick up. When one of us has 10%, the other one's coming in with 90%. And it's never 50-50, really. So, yeah, I think ultimately who you are surrounding yourself with is the biggest flex in entrepreneurship, the rooms that you're getting into and the people you're aligning with.
It's vital, and especially for women because we're so energy focused, and we're so nurturing, and we actually are meant to be more in collective and working together and finding that community is the medicine. And
Yes.
we're going through things, and I think it's so important, though, that it's the right people you surround yourself with. When I said at the beginning, we had an energetic match the moment we met, look for that, honor that, and know, like, how vital that is to your growth and success, and you've got to constantly be checking in on that, and you were able to put this book in the world because you're so conscious of that,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah, there were so many times that I experienced a whole new layer of self-doubt in this
Mhm.
journey. I feel like this tested me in all the ways that I write about, in especially going in this kind of final stretch to publishing. But there were a lot of things I did to hold myself accountable. And a big part of that was speaking my dream out loud. I think it wasn't really until I'd like written a rough draft, and then it was earlier this year where I started actually talking about the book in these rooms that I was getting into with these people. And then I started sharing about it online. And then I booked the launch party at the venue, and I was in it. There was no backing out.
Yeah.
So when I had those uncomfortable weeks in the in between, where I remember that one of the hardest ones was when I sent the manuscript off to the first round of early readers. And, I know they were so excited to read it, but there was silence for a while, and my husband had to keep reminding me, like, "These are busy entrepreneur moms that you have sent your book to. They have a lot going on. They don't read a book, binge a book in a night either like you tend to do." So, just kind of working through that quiet time
Mhm.
and tapping back into myself again,
Mhm.
trusting again. And it wasn't so much like seeking the external validation in that process. It really was just needing, maybe not needing, but like understanding and believing that this book is having the impact that I set out for it to have.
Mhm.
And then when that feedback started coming in, it was such a breath of relief. And every time I've held the book in my hands and been reading it, I'm like, yes, I know that this is the story. But when I'm away from it, when it was like with my editors or at distance, I'm like finding myself spiraling, like, oh, did I say this the right way, or how's this? It was such a roller coaster, such a
Well,
roller
I
coaster.
I don't know if I've ever picked up a book that I've cried in the first few pages. I cannot recall a time until your book that I cried in the first few pages. And just also that, like, that feeling of being in the story, which I really think is going to be one of the things that especially women take away from reading your book, is that they're going to feel themselves in the story. And
Mm.
that is when you have such massive impact. Because by the end of it, it felt like not the same journey. Obviously, we have different pieces of the journey, but I felt like I came home to myself again in new ways because I got to go through that process with you that reminded me of the ways that I've been there and I've seen myself in that. And I guess that's the mirror too, right?
Oh my
When
gosh.
you can write a book that has that impact on people, that again, it's the ripple effect. And so the energy that is in this book is it's such a high vibrational frequency. It's
Oh, I love
such
that.
a high vibrational frequency. We were talking before we jumped on the podcast about the cover. Can you share, because that amplified the frequency for me again, just
Oh.
knowing how much you've trusted your soul.
This is still a proof, it's not the official, so ignore the line, but yes, I first of all, I love that because I think a big again, another lesson in this in terms of I had to go first, I had to practice what I preach. I share all the time about the power of telling your story and how it standing in your truth and embracing the vulnerability and how much deep connection that leads to. So there was no way I I was never gonna write a heavily research-based book or a how-to book. It always was going to have to be a vulnerable book where I am going first and sharing my story and sharing, all those intimate details that I want it to feel like that late night conversation, Lori, which reminds me of that feeling you and I had when we first connected, especially when we first connected in person and we went for drinks at the High Five Women event. And, those are the conversations that happen. That's the conversation I wanted to put in the book. And that's what I wanted it to feel like. So hearing that just means so much to me. But yes, I was at the point early spring where I had the first, draft of the book done, but it still was untitled.
Mm.
And I was like also having to deal with the old patterns around perfectionism coming up around that, like that pressure to have the perfect title. And it wasn't landing. And then so by this point we had moved into the house that we rebuilt that is now our dream home. And um, you'll see how that all went down when you read the book. But my husband and I would go out and sit on the back deck after we put the kids to bed. It was our time for us. We'd watch the sunset, and these swans that flew by one night, and it was just like such a picturesque, like literally took our breath away. We both like, I think both of our jaws were dropped watching them. And it was something I think I've taken for granted. You see swans in the water all the time, but seeing them fly right across the sky that way, they were so elegant and graceful and majestic. And so it really caught us. And then they kept doing it every evening around 10 to 8, literally like to the minute. We'd hear their trumpets and then they'd fly by. And I was like, "Oh, that how cool is that?" They're going to the pond down the street. It's like evening. They're coming home to the pond. And coming home just like landed. And it just like connected all the dots.
Mhm.
And I'm just also a big person in following the signs, following the nudges. And the fact that they kept doing this for literally like 2 weeks
Wow.
just was like, obviously this is the
For
title.
you.
And then they left. Then they left and I was on my own again for a little while. But you know what? They came back just a couple weeks ago, which felt again kind of full circle now putting it out into the world.
That is so full circle. That is incredible. And no, I can't think of a time I've seen swans fly. So it was for you. It is for you. And if we open our eyes and we take some deep breaths and we be an allowance, those things are available for all of us. So I love that you're teaching us how to follow those. There was a moment in the book where you write about the messy middle. None of us have ever experienced that. So for people that are feeling that right now, what would you say to her right now? Her
Yeah.
in the middle of this messiness.
I think with the messy middle, it's so easy to wanna get out of it as quick as possible, to kind of escape it or numb it with other habits or behaviors. But what I've learned is it actually is quite a magical place to be if you can sit in it and feel it and let it teach you the lessons that it is there to teach you, which is
Mhm.
so much easier said than done.
Duck.
Right? Just saying it feels
Don't
uncomfortable.
make me.
But it's part of the journey, it's part of the process. And I think, there's so much growth that happens in that stage that you don't even realize because it feels so uncomfortable and you just want to get out of it. But I think if you can really let yourself slow down and appreciate what it's there to teach you and how it's there to guide you. And, just remember that we are so conditioned to not feel that. And I think there's a reason we're conditioned that way, especially as ambitious women leaders who are so powerful and can change the freaking world.
Mhm.
And there's a reason that the world wants us to be constantly feeling stressed and overwhelmed and busy so that we don't actually sit down and learn the lessons and hear the nudges and get to follow our aligned path and our purpose because that's how we that's how we initiate massive change.
Mhm.
That's how the movements start, and there's no escaping it. It's there, so there to embrace it.
Mhm. We can escape it if we don't pay attention.
Yeah.
And then we don't actually ever evolve and expand into who we're meant to be.
Yes.
So I love your perspective of sit in it, slow down in it. I learned something recently that I had never heard, and it's the butterfly goo. Have you heard of this?
Yes.
So they actually have, like, a really sticky, icky goo when they're trying to come out of that messy middle, and it is super uncomfortable, and we don't even get to see that. I think that is what's so interesting. We get to see the caterpillar, which is kinda cool. We maybe see a cocoon, and then we see this majestical butterfly,
Yeah.
but we
Which is
don't.
like real life.
That's
Because
real life.
even in the online space, again, when we say we wanna show up
Mhm.
fully and authentically, we're not showing our gooey nights.
We're not.
I'm not filming myself, on the breakdowns, like, it just even when I try to give the full picture, it's so hard, but yeah, I love that, and I know there's also a stage where their wings are too, like, wet, right, to fly,
Mm,
and they need to let them dry, and
yes,
so it really is
that's
like
in
you are
there.
forced to sit in this space,
Mhm,
and, I mean, I think it's also just such a powerful reminder of how many lessons we learn through nature.
mhm.
Like the tree outside your window that blooms no matter what anyone else is doing and is not paying attention to the plant next to it. Um, I think nature is just our greatest teacher in that way. So I love the butterfly analogy. It's so powerful.
If nature is our greatest teacher, that's why swans fly by when they have a message for you.
Exactly.
Called biomimicry. It's actually the study of nature and the science of nature and the rhythms that we align to when we
Wow.
allow ourselves. Yes, it's an actual study in science, which is so cool.
Fascinating.
Um, so when you think about the legacy you're building right now through coming home, your business and your family, what is that impact? Let's fast forward 1 year and you get to look back,
Mm.
even just
That's
1
fun.
year. What is the impact that you desire to know has happened?
Mm. I think the impact is other readers, women especially, mothers, entrepreneurs, leaders, feeling more courage to stand in their truth and stand in the power of their story, and to actually share that story with the world and know and experience the ripple effect of that. It really is kind of that full circle moment. I think it's so important to share the journey because I want other people to realize that if there is a book on your heart and in your dreams, like, now is the time. Stop doing what I did and constantly putting it at the top of your goal list or your manifestation list, and then another year goes by and you haven't actually made any progress. Prioritize that dream, and it can happen so much more beautifully and quicker than you even realize. Doesn't mean it won't be uncomfortable. But the magic is in the journey and how it unfolds, and you're gonna learn so much about yourself along the way. I say that with I feel like the book is one thing, but who I've become in the process of writing the book and editing the book and putting it out into the world, that is the real success
Mhm.
of this experience. So I haven't even thought about a year from now. I haven't even had the capacity to go there. So thank you for that. Thank you for letting me receive that and yeah, I can't wait to see
Well, I
what a
think
year
you heard
brings.
one of the things, you'll be celebrating a European tour.
Yes, yes.
I can see it. I can now we've put it out to the universe. Let's see what happens. And finally, Carly, I see a part 2 here. Definitely in a few months, I would love to get back together and just talk about the expansiveness that's happened since. But until then, what does coming home really mean to you now at this stage in who you've become?
Mm, I think it's a trust and a belief that who you are now in this moment is more than enough, and you are so worthy of your dreams. And if you can hold that authentic favorite version of yourself and lead with that and make decisions from that place and show up in the energy of her, then magical things will happen.
Mm. Thank you. I appreciate you so much. This conversation felt like it was 2 seconds, and just, you've given so many beautiful opportunities and nuggets to our listeners. Is there any final words of wisdom that you would love to share?
Oh, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. Like, this really feels like a dream come true, getting to have this conversation with you. And I echo everything you're saying about this connection that we've had. And we only have known each other less than a year, which is wild. I feel like it's been a lifetime. That's that soulful connection that, so I think it's that. I think it's I think it's pay attention to who you are surrounding yourself with, and, remember, there's so much truth in that old saying of that you are the 5 people that you spend the most time with, and really let yourself get a little critical about who those people are in your life, because changing your environment, your circle, can change everything.
Mm, amen. Amen. And for our listeners, run out and get the book right now.
Yay.
It's Amazon, that's gonna be your favorite place to get it, and Carly cannot wait to see what unfolds and what you're gonna be up to next, and until
Thank
then,
you.
yes, keep showing us that we can be ambitious and aligned.
Thanks so much, Lori.
So important. Mwah. Carly, thank you. Thank you, thank you for showing up so fully with courage, vulnerability, and truth. Your book, Coming Home, it's not just a story, it's an invitation for all of us to remember who we really are and to trust the wisdom that's already within us. For those listening, I hope you felt yourself mirrored in Carly's words, the messy middle, the breakthroughs, and the reminder that you don't have to wait for someday to meet your favorite self. You can connect with Carly at webofwords.ca, on Instagram at webofwords, or at It's Carly Ottaway. And of course, pick up her book, Coming Home, wherever books are sold. And as always, thank you for tuning in, for choosing to rise, and for leading from the inside out. Until next time, keep becoming and keep coming home to yourself.